Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and that makes this episode 18, the first ever episode 18 of the Cloud Control Gaming Podcast. And I know you wanted to start the show off with some really big and exciting news, Kate, so the floor is yours. Let me know, what is this exciting news you have to share?
So I have been buzzing all day. After 3 years of waiting, we finally have confirmation that Frosthaven is arriving, and me and my group, as of Sunday, this recent upcoming Sunday, we played our last ever potential Gloomhaven scenario, and now we're ready to move on to the sequel of Frosthaven, and oh my god, it is a monumental occasion.
Okay, so 2 quick questions for those playing along at home that may not be aware. Question number 1, can you please just explain a little bit what Frosthaven might be, what Gloomhaven is? Just the Cole's notes very quickly. And question number 2, how excited are you just in general for the changes and the upgrades for Frosthaven compared to Gloomhaven?
So I would say that at some point I should do a proper section and bring this as a proper topic, because I don't think I've really talked much on the show, but it is like a massive part of my life. I play Gloomhaven almost as much as I play video games, so that's a pretty big deal. It's largely the same. There's definitely some quality of life upgrades, and there's a few smaller systems that have been adjusted, like some stuff between going on missions and some various new additions, but largely it is the same game, and the characters are all made so that they can be played retroactively in Gloomhaven, and Gloomhaven characters can be brought into Frosthaven if you so choose. So the exciting part about this is largely it's just more content, and there's a new story, a new campaign, like a bunch of new characters to play. Like, it's a legacy board game, so there's going to be a million little like things you're not allowed to open until certain conditions have been met. So it's largely about the experience and more of it than like, we're done with Gloomhaven and on to something new.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let me just be the first to say it's been a pleasure podcasting with you. I am officially taking applications for a brand new co-host, as Kate will no longer have time to play video games and I'll never see her again. So,
you know what the best part about that is? Literally every single person I have told knows the Gloomhaven like phenomena enough that they go, well, it was nice seeing you, it was nice knowing you. Like, I'll see you in 6 months.
All right, well, let's hear more about that on the show in the future, because for now, well, we still have you here to talk about video games. We need to get right to it, because of course this is not a podcast about Gloomhaven yet, and we have a fun topic today, so let's get right to it. We had an idea before, we're like, let's do some more tier lists. What could be the funnest thing to rank? What's a game that we both played and has several characters and could be a lot of fun to talk about? Well, it's Danganronpa, everybody, and we're here today to rank every single character from the 3 mainline Danganronpa games. Not the spin-off ones, we haven't played those, unfortunately, but every single character from the mainline Danganronpa games. So that'll be the main topic of today's show. If you want to listen to that right now, there's a timestamp wherever you're listening to this, and you can click that right now at the bottom and go straight to that. Because before we get to that, we are going to talk about 2 other topics very quickly. Number 1, I bought Pokemon Scarlet, so I'm going to talk my impressions about that. I played about 10 hours. I know we did an episode a couple of months ago all about the new gen, but I wanted to just come on here and give my little spiel about it because I've been playing. And then Kate watched Castlevania the first season, so let's talk about that right afterwards. But so yeah, let's start off. Pokemon. So interesting game. So I'm playing, and this is interesting to contextualize to post-patch, because I know when we talked about it last time, we were saying there's going to be a patch. What are they going to upgrade? What are they not? To be honest, I couldn't tell you what's changed in that patch. I haven't read the patch notes, but all I know is I've had a relatively glitch-free session with it so far. I mean, I've had some weird stuff just to get it out of the way, like, my Pokemon didn't show up one time in a battle. I've like fallen through the I've fallen off the edge of a cliff and had this weird thing happen where like NPCs talk to me, but they didn't appear inside one of those star bases. I wasn't supposed to be in there, and they tell me to leave, and I'm like, okay, man, but I can't even see where I am. Then it just teleports me out, so that's fine. I've kind of encountered Pokemon while I've been standing on the edge of a cliff, and like my character is sort of standing in the geometry or like kind of slides down into the water and gets in a battle. It just kind of looks weird, but nothing that's really terrible. I have had one hard crash where I lost just like up until the last checkpoint, but I'd just been to a Pokemon Center, so that's fine. But I mean, aside from the technical issues, I would say I'm having a really good time with this game so far. I like a lot of the Pokemon. I know we were talking a little bit before we recorded just now that you said you didn't like a lot of the This is like the first gen where you said you didn't like a lot of the Pokemon. What you saying?
Yeah, it's not even just a like, oh, Gen 1's the best one ever. Like,
no,
kind of bullshit. Like, I think even up this like Sword and Shield included, like I find I like the vast majority, like a rough number off the top of my head, like at least 80% of them, like very high majority I tend to like. This is, I think, the first gen where that has dipped, and I definitely still like some of the designs, but it stands out to me as like the weakest one for me personally. But obviously it comes down to preference largely, and it's not even just because Gimme Ghoul was so disappointing because he could have been my favorite, and then he turns into the string cheese man.
That's right.
Even just overall, but yeah, there's still some cool ones.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I would say like I think Sun and Moon was my least favorite in terms of the Pokemon, and then this one I've liked quite a few. Like I like the Orthworm a lot. I think Kilowattrel is really cool. That Lokix, the Bug Dart guy, is really cool. So I've had a lot of fun kind of subbing my team out. There's the shared experience is a huge favorite of ours. We were just talking about that too, so it's really nice to kind of have that ability to switch your team around in these more modern games. But it's been fun to just kind of run around and see what's out there and catch guys. I really like the not mandatory trainer battles because I found that I've been interested more than I thought in actually catching the Pokemon and filling out the Pokedex just because of how visually pleasing it is. I love the Pokedex design in this game, like the way they're all kind of those volumed archives about the Pokemon and the bookshelf, and it's just presented really nicely in a way that's sort of interesting to collect and fill out, more so than other games.
For as bad as the map is designed, the Pokedex is potentially like the best Pokedex that we've ever had.
Yeah, the Pokedex is phenomenal. The map is confusing. God bless those like colored indicators on the mini map that tell you what direction you're facing, because I would be totally lost without those. But it is kind of confusing. But this game obviously has so many parallels to Arceus, right? And I had so much fun catching the Pokemon in Arceus because you didn't have to battle them and it was more about your trainer interacting. I really miss that in this game. I think that would be my biggest criticism so far, is I wish you could have the option to battle them if you wanted, but you could also just sort of chuck the ball if you felt really confident that you didn't even need to weaken the Pokemon or something like that. I think that would have been a nice touch and a nice way to bridge what they'd been doing in Arceus into this game. But I don't know, like that's not really something I would expect, I guess, because Arceus is more of a spin-off title. I don't know. What am I trying to say? The 3 storylines thing, I've heard really a lot of people talking about how the story in this game is a lot more compelling than in other Pokemon games, and it's actually worth the payoff at the end and whatnot. And I'm sort of, I think, like 2 missions into each of the stories and then maybe 3 into the gym challenges. I've done 3 gyms. And I would say so far, I would probably agree that it is more interesting than other Pokemon games to this point, but I wouldn't go as far to say as I'm really compelled by any of the storylines and that I'm really emotionally invested. I know there's the one guy who's got like his sick Pokemon, and there's, they're trying to make it emotional, and it is sad. Like it's a sick Pokemon, but at the end of the day, like it's not being presented as though, the emotions in Plague Tale Requiem and like the terrible things going on there, like that hits you like an emotional chuck, or like God of War, like the things happening there. This is obviously toned down, and it's not going to match those in terms of like the realism, but I still think there's room for like maybe a bit more depth. So maybe it'll get there. I'm not sure. I'm excited to figure it out because I'm having a lot of fun playing this so far. So maybe I'll check in with it again later, but I don't know if you wanted to share anything about what I've said or comment, but I'm liking it so far. Yeah.
I've got a question for you, and that is, are you kind of following a map guide, or are you kind of just like wandering around and encountering what you encounter?
Well, I'm not using any type of guide. I'm just kind of going on the map, and the map does a really good job of as for hard as it is to understand, it does a good job of sort of placing the indicators on it. And as someone that doesn't really love huge open world games that just make you explore endlessly and you don't feel like you're really feel like you're really making any progress. I would rather have these indicators on there so at least I can beeline it to where I need to go and start checking them off. And I've had a pretty good experience. Maybe I've just gotten lucky kind of picking the order of the things that I'm doing, but I've always felt, for the most part, that I've been about the right power level, if not a little bit too strong for each of the challenges, which is why I've been kind of shuffling my team to make it a little bit weaker, so it's not just like I'm running through. But there was only one time, I think, where I had to be like, I went and challenged one of the Titan Pokemon and it like absolutely wiped me out. I was like way too weak, and so I just kind of left. But other than that, even if I've ran into a couple wild areas where I'm a little too weak, but you just run away from the Pokemon or like fly with the taxi to a different location and you're fine. So I've had a pretty simple time with that.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think that was one of my complaints, but I think I just maybe like back to back went to two places I shouldn't have been and was like, oh, it's really disappointing. Or maybe I didn't like explore enough, so I was under leveled. I don't know, but
yeah, it's hard to say.
Absolutely rocked at one of the team stars, but I'd done the like mini game to get to the boss, and so then I was like, oh, I just spent like 5 minutes like.
Oh yeah, those mini games are interesting.
Yeah, that's my other question. Is I only ever did the 1 team star or 2 team star properly. Are they all the same? Because I know the gym challenges do get swapped up, and the Titans have kind of, I guess, like their double battle sort of gimmick. But are the team star all just sort of like the auto battle?
I've only done 2 of them as well, but the 2 that I've done are auto battle, and I think the challenge there, I guess, is having the right Pokemon on your team as like a 3 Pokemon squad to take on a certain type of Pokemon. But I haven't had any challenge with those whatsoever. Like those have probably been the easiest out of all the battles I've done, like the Titans or the gyms or like the Team Star. I've absolutely flattened those Team Star challenges. Like especially when you're doing not like before the fight can be reasonably tough, I guess, at the end, depending on your level. But like the challenge beforehand, it's just a cakewalk. At least the 2 that I've done. I think I did Dark and Fire, maybe. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, then I've got one last question for you. Which of the 3 paths do you think is the most interesting so far? Between the gym, the Titans, and this
let's say I'd be interested to hear what you say afterwards too, because you've probably played a bit more than me. But if I had to rank them right now, I
think you might have beat me by now. I really only played a couple sessions and then kind of.
Okay, maybe I have then. I would say, I mean, right now I'm having the most fun probably with the Titan. Well, no, I take that back. I really enjoy the tracking part of the Titan Pokemon. I found that they really do a good job so far of incorporating like how the Pokemon would be in its environment. Like I just fought the giant earthworm Pokemon. Spoilers for anyone that hasn't made it that far. But it's like in a mine and there's like tunnels going around and it's like as if it's been digging through there and whatnot. So it's kind of contextualized really nicely. So I've been enjoying seeing some of how those are set up, I guess. I'd probably say the gyms are my second favorite, and then I like the idea of the Team Star, but I don't know, it's been not that great, and if the story ends up being like, oh, it's just like the dog is sick and then he gets healed by the end, that's not that fulfilling. So we'll see if it switches it up, but I'd probably rank him in that order.
Okay. I've got one last question. Do you like Nimona, or is she an absolute stalking psychopath?
Oh dear.
Who's going to kill you at the end of the game?
Nimona would be the rival, yes?
Yeah, the rival girl who just wants to battle you, but only you, forever, for the rest of your life. Don't you dare battle anyone else. She'll know.
Oh my god, you know what? I never thought of her like that, but now that you've pointed it out, she is a bit obsessive, isn't she? Yeah.
Yeah. No, she terrifies me. I don't trust her. And I think where the story's really worth it at the end is it culminates that she's an absolute psychopath and you got to take her down.
We never. I'll let you know when I get to the end if that ends up being the case. It's plausible. It's plausible.
That's my fan theory. That's my Pokemon fan theory. So keep that in mind as you play.
I will. Yeah, I'll never see it another way now. That's for sure. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'll get to the end. I'll probably talk about it one more time when I beat it. But fun stuff so far, I would say. Okay, so I've watched this show before, and I think you have too, because you said you rewatched it, right? But let's hear about Castlevania.
So I'm counting this as my proper first watch. I have seen a few scenes here and there from the show because someone I was living with at the time was watching it. So I wasn't watching it with them, but if it's on in the house, sometimes you catch bits and pieces. But for all intents and purposes, this is my first time watching Castlevania, which has, been on my list for a long time, and it is good. Like, I would say So I watched the first season exclusively. It's only 4 episodes, and the episodes are like, once you get past the title introduction and there's credits and stuff, they're probably about 20 minutes long. So that's pretty short for a first season. I mean, I actually watched it in one sitting, like
Oh,
not
wow.
realizing that was going to be the whole show, but just like, having a quiet evening and just like, we'll put on a couple episodes. Like,
It's
kind of
still
like,
shorter than Avatar.
absolutely. Well, yeah, exactly. It was kind of just like felt like sitting down and watching a movie. But it was the first episode of a show instead, or the first season of a show. But I'm really impressed, especially because this is 2017 when it came out, which is we weren't quite at the place we're at now with video game adaptations being like consistently pretty good.
I feel like this might have been one of the first of the new wave of good game adaptations.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't think of too many. I'm sure there was some, but this feels like it was long enough ago where this might have been the first of the new set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think this is one of the ones that when it was coming out, people were pretty like, they weren't sold on it right away. They were relatively concerned, like, oh, is it going to be good? Is it going to be terrible? Whereas if it had come out now, especially with the trailers of like what the show looks like, I feel like it kind of seems like it would be a slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, so far, it seems like it was. Like the first season, I would say, is very setup based. Like it
Yeah.
really feels almost like a big like pilot episode for what the rest of the show will become. But I'm definitely hooked. Like I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm really compelled. I like all the characters. The
Mm-hmm.
art is incredible. And this is probably not on a massive budget for the first season one that was like testing the waters a little bit.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that, but you're right. It is so beautiful. And what I like about it so much is it just has a unique look to it. Like it's not an anime, but it's sort of not a cartoon either, It has this, it almost seems like the frame rate dips at certain times, but it looks cool. You know what I mean? Like the animation when they're in combat almost isn't as fluid as something like One Punch Man or one of those big action animes would be, but it has its own style that ends up looking just as striking.
Yeah, it's really neat, and I think their use of colors is one of the best thing. Like it's a really dark and grim show, right? Like the premise, at least so far, is Dracula is destroying the entire world, or at least Wallachia, because they killed his wife, and he is getting revenge on them. Basically, he thinks humanity doesn't deserve to live, and our main character is going to try to stop him. So it's a really dark, grim show. Like there's like coming every night and just slaughtering people by the hundreds, and they do not pull their punches in this show. Like it is grim, it is dark, and the whole aesthetic just goes so well. Like I'm glad they leaned into it because it's a really dark, horrible topic, and they're like if you want to do that well, you have to like full commit to that. Like this show doesn't feel corny or cheesy or like what
No,
like
not in the
middle-aged people
slightest.
would think as a cartoon. Like it is pretty gruesome. Like, and one of my favorite things is you see a lot of like his armies of the night come. Like once sundown hits, it's really dangerous because that's when like the gargoyles and his various like hell beasts go and they attack cities. And then you'll see in the morning afterwards, they're cleaning up. Like there is blood everywhere. There are bodies everywhere. They're piling dead bodies. Like they're throwing them down the sewers. And like there's one scene where someone's like, their what is it called? Their like intestines are like wrapped around some pole. They're trying to like reach them to get them down.
Yeah.
And it's so gruesome. And then in the combat they commit to it too with like, there's the blood, like someone loses an eye at one point, and it's just it's dark, but it never goes too far. I feel where it gets to be like, oh, it's edgy. Like, vampires can sometimes get into that like, oh, it's so edgy and like cool, but like, not really cool. Like it's trying too hard. Whereas I think this strikes that really good balance of like it shows how dark and gruesome that this world would be, but it doesn't ever fall into that like over the top kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm. I think it does a good job of staying pretty grounded in the most part, well, at least within the context of the world that it sets up. Because you even see some things on as well, like later on, about like more on the vampire side of the war and like more on the human side, and you see like both sides have their struggles and whatnot. It's not just like this fantasized war where there's, no context in terms of how it's affecting the greater population of those different communities. And it is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think like the complaint for this season, I could totally see if people had just watched it, when it came out, is like it's way too short. That is my one complaint with season 1. It's way too short. But luckily, there are multiple seasons now. So I don't have to worry about that. But I could imagine like you just get this tiny little bite size, you have a lot of questions, you want to see more, and then it's like, well, wait a year for season 2. But yeah, so far I'm compelled. I think it does an interesting job of like Dracula is obviously a big antagonist, but he's sympathetic because his whole conquest right now is a response to the love of his life being murdered unjustly, which like there's no question about whether or not his wife being burnt at the stake for being a witch because she was trying to heal her town folk medicine is like that's not a morally gray thing, right? Like that was objectively horrible, what happened to this woman. And one could argue that maybe destroying humanity is a bit of an overreaction. But he's got a clear character motivation, which, while you don't agree with, is sympathetic to a degree.
Yeah, it's sympathetic in the sense that it's like, out of all the things that could potentially push someone to having that type of opinion, even though like the average person would get nowhere near that kind of thing, at least it's like somewhat believable. It's not just like, some throwaway line about why they're wanting to do this kind of conquest.
Yeah, exactly. So he's kind of set up as an interesting villain. I'm interested to see more about where his character goes. Like maybe get some, like I'm hoping for some flashbacks that flesh out their relationship a bit more, and we get to see him in a bit more of like a humanized role. Because you only really see them together for the first episode, and then it moves on. And then we have, of course, Trevor Belmont, who's like the main good guy, and he's a lot of fun because he's sort of the like dejected hero type where in his heart he wants to do the right thing, but he's just so given up on the world that he needs a motivation to come back to it. Like his first call to action we see of him is him being like drunk, getting into a bar fight and kind of losing. Like he doesn't really show up heroically, but you see little splashes of that in him, so that will be interesting to see. And yeah, I think like overall it's a good hook. I want to see more, and luckily I can. And the show is absolutely gorgeous. And the amount of times they light people in this like horrible red lighting, especially all the like bishops and the priest characters, which are maybe the true villains of the show, potentially.
We will see. We will
Just
see.
these like dark red, horrible lighting. Yeah, compelling show. I recommend anyone. And I've never played Castlevania, so I don't think that's a prerequisite. I'm sure there's tons of
it's definitely not
Easter eggs and cute things. Like I know about the whip and some of the weapons and stuff like that, but largely like I don't think that's necessary. If anything, my only other complaint in the show is that there's a little too much exposition that's repeated. Like there's a lot of like anytime Trevor meets someone, he's like, "Oh, I'm from House Belmont, and House Belmont was excommunicated by the church." And then like the next episode, he meets someone else and it's like, "I'm from House Belmont, and House Belmont was excommunicated by the church. I hate those guys." And so there's a lot of like hammering in like who everybody is, which maybe goes to the point where it's a little unnecessary. But every time that's packed into a scene, there's also like some really good character moments as well. So it's not a huge problem, but by the fourth episode, you're like, okay, I know who House Belmont is now. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, largely really enjoying it, and
Cool.
excited to watch some more when I'm not playing Frosthaven, which is never. So.
Which is never, exactly. Okay, rapid fire question for you before we get to the grand ranking scale. In the Cole's Notes version, maybe 10 words or less about each one at most. Rank Sypha, Trevor, and Alucard.
Right. So this is going to be our squad. I mean, I like them all. Trevor.
It's a hard ranking.
Trevor's probably the highest right now, just because I think I've had a little bit more of him than the other two, so I've had a little bit more time to get attached. Alucard is a cool vampire who's gonna have some dad issues, so that's fun. and his fighting was really cool. And Sypha, badass mage, and the speakers are really interesting. So I'm gonna say they're all A tier right now, and we'll see where it goes.
I'm not asking for tiers. 1, 2, 3. Just do it. 3 names, 3 words.
Oh, Trevor, Sypha, Alucard.
Wow. Okay, that's all we wanted. That's all we wanted. It's just warm up. We're warming up for the tier list, which we're gonna start right now, everybody. Welcome to the tier list of the Danganronpa characters from games 1, 2, and 3. We're gonna rank all of them right here, right now. And this is how it's going to work. So we have a tier maker list right here. For anyone watching on video content, you can look along with us at this tier list. And if you're not watching on video, that's okay. We'll do our best to describe what we're doing here. But basically, we have all the characters listed below with 5 tiers above on a chart from S down to A. It's S, A, B, C, and D. Basically, Kate, do you want to go over what each of the rankings will be? Each of the categories. Yeah.
We're just gonna keep it super simple. Like B is a pretty like middle of the road. Like that's your 3 out of 5. Like they're good characters, but they don't stand out as being amazing. But there's also like not a lot of negativity to them. C is we don't really like this character much, but they're not hugely offensive. Maybe they have a redeeming quality or two. D, we hate them. These characters suck. And then the inverse going up, A is it's a pretty good character. We like them quite a bit. And S tier is these are the best characters in the game and we adore them.
Exactly. Okay. So I guess that's all we really need to talk about. So let's just start. We're just going to go in order of the way the characters are listed down below. So let's see if which of these we remember, Kate. We have our first character right here.
Yeah. So that is Hane from Game 2, the Ultimate Gymnast.
Yes.
If you remember her.
I do.
She
liked the kitchen, if I remember, when they were locked in the school.
Yeah, she's basically the archetype of like to fight, must eat lots of meat, and she's really fucking dumb.
She had passion though, you know. I would say I would put her personally right in the B tier. I think she was like a fine cast member, but you know, wasn't as bad as some. Wasn't exciting.
Exactly. I think her best parts were just how she like interacted with Nekomaru, and they would kind of like try to one up each other and like fight all the time. But other than her relationship with him, she was pretty like forgettable character, I think. So yeah, B sounds pretty.
B's okay. We can always fix it later. Next up we have Monomi. One of my personal favorites, to be completely honest with you. I love her relationship with Monokuma in the second game. The way she was just always like doing her very best to be a good person and have a kind heart, but he would just like take so much advantage of her and like belittle her and like send her flying into the sky. And she'd just come back and be like, "I'm so sorry, but I can help you." Like, I just think it was so funny. I would motion to have her put in the S tier myself. But I'm open to debates.
This is where we would get into conflict. I would put her as an A tier, not because I necessarily have a lot of things I don't like about her. Like, she was overall funny, but I don't think she stood out as being one of the most entertaining characters. And, like, if I compare her to some of who I think are the S tier characters, like, she's just not Monokuma level. She's not, like, well, I won't spoil who else might get up there, but I would put her in a high A.
How about for now, we put her at S, but she's the lowest in S, and we can move her down if it gets too crowded.
Okay.
As a deal.
Fine, but I get a tiebreak later.
Yeah, we'll talk. Next up, we have this guy. I completely forget who he is, but I know he was one of those sexual pig kind of characters.
Yeah. So that was Hifumi from the first game, and he was definitely one of those characters. But I would give him the like benefit of he was really at least kind of funny about it. Like those like over the top sexual jokes were, I think we can agree, probably both of our least favorite parts of Danganronpa.
Oh, by an absolute mile.
He was funny because I feel like he was the one that was like getting made fun of it for the most. Like he was just such the stereotypical. I think he was the ultimate
he was like
gamer or something.
Yeah, he was like a computer tech or like a...
Oh, so he was the ultimate fanfic creator. That's what it was. Yeah. So he was very much just like, you know, he was like kind of fat and ugly. He was like sweating all the time. And he was like, he wrote fanfic and he had like a lisp. And like, he just got shit on for being like, you know, that horrible like nerd stereotype, which, you know, maybe isn't a good stereotype to throw around. But like, if you're going to have one of those characters, they went like all out on him, and he just sort of like everybody hates him. So
it's interesting.
It was like,
yeah, I just don't know. I think that all the like perv characters need to be in D. Like we're not gonna have that many in D. Like, or why are we really defending this guy? Like, there's so many cool characters in this game.
My one defense of this guy is because instead of just being a perv, he was a perv character that was like actively made fun of for being a perv. So it was like saying, it was like giving the commentary like he's a loser because he's a pervert. And so sometimes he actually did genuinely have like funny moments where he's doing the like, actually in episode 473 of that anime, this happened, and so you're wrong. And like, but yeah,
I think that,
I don't know. I'd put him in C, but I'm not gonna fight for him if you really want to put him in D.
I motion to put him in D. I'll really pay you back later if you want, but he's a perv and he's down. And also, you know, just as an aside too, like, you know, he's like kind of that like nerdy, sweaty, like, you know, like we're beyond like making jokes about fat people these days. Come on, like it's not funny either. So that's why I feel
that might come back later more successfully, but
yeah, I guess. All right, Monokuma. Anyone that's played Danganronpa knows he's going straight to the top.
S tier, absolutely. I was Monokuma for Halloween last year. He is an S tier character 100% of the time.
He's one of the funniest characters in all of video games. I'm like so confident in that.
He is. He plays the role of like wacky, hilarious, but also like genuinely a bit terrifying so incredibly well. And anytime to this day I read like "Good morning, everyone," I read it in his voice from to like "Good morning, everyone."
Yeah, me too. And you know what I love about him as well is he's an example of sort of that Deadpool break the fourth wall style of humor that does it in a way which isn't cringy. Like, I don't know about you, but I know it's maybe like not a hot take, but like I find that style of humor cringy so often. Like Deadpool to me was almost cringier than it was funny in a lot of points, and I find that Monokuma is actually doing it better in a similar way.
Yeah, I was ironically, I was coincidentally just talking to someone yesterday about Deadpool, and we both like Deadpool, but I think we agreed that some of the most difficult humor to write because it just like on that spectrum of like when it works, it has to be almost perfect for it to work. Otherwise, it's horrible. Like I don't think I've ever seen that style of humor and been like, yeah, that was okay. Like it was good. It's either like fantastic or it's horrible. And like the margin of error is so low. But I agree, Monokuma pulls it off. And I think that's one of the whole things. Like he's just so representative of Danganronpa of like, it's such a weird stylistic game in terms of like the whole setting and the way that it's written, and like Monokuma just embodies all of like the Danganronpa weirdness.
Yeah, he really is such a representative mascot of the entire game. Like if you were to pick any character, and obviously it would be him for sure. That would, I mean, for a reason he's the mascot, I guess you could say, but he justifies that status well. So I guess we'll move along. This girl, I remember her look, but I can't remember who she is.
So that is Angie. She is the ultimate artist from the third game.
Yeah.
And she is the one, if you remember, who has a bright, bubbly personality and then starts a cult.
Yes. Okay, I do remember her. I mean, yeah. What do you say about her? I mean,
I think she's an A tier. I think she was just such like a loose cannon in the game because she genuinely like starts a cult, and there's just some crazy things that happen with the trials afterwards and how it divides the characters between like who joins Angie and who doesn't, and she almost gets like worshipped by a few other characters, and she's just such a weird, like it's a weird dynamic she creates, but she's also like so incredibly believing in it. Like she 100% believes in this like cult she started that can like bring people back from the dead, and she's just you never trust her.
Yeah, you know what? I do remember her now that you're mentioning that. Excuse me. I remember the cult thing, right? Because then there was like one character that was just so obsessed with her that would do anything for her, right? Yeah, I think the fact that she influences the plot to the degree that she does is, you're right, pretty influential. And though I didn't recognize her face, I totally remember that plot point. And yeah, she's pretty cool. And those characters that are unpredictable are the best because this game is so unpredictable as a whole. Those characters just really throw you for a loop, which I appreciate because the unpredictability is like the best part of the narrative. Okay, So we have this girl. This is Aoi, right? She's the runner.
That is Aoi.
Or the swimmer?
Yeah.
Swimmer?
She is the ultimate swimmer, I believe.
I remember.
Yeah, she's the ultimate pro.
I remember liking her quite a bit. Like she was just like a friendly, sort of charismatic, sort of positive kind of character that was like a glue type of person for the group's morale. But I don't particularly remember her doing anything super influential. She was friends with Sakura, right? In the first game, like really good friends with her.
Yeah, you basically hit the nail on the head. Like she is one of the only characters I think that I would actually ever want to spend time with in real life.
Sure, yeah.
She was just a positive person. Like she was always super motivated. She was always like, okay, like things are horrible, but like, you know, we should try our best, and just kind of had a good attitude. And yeah, like you said, the morale of the team. And so I think maybe
I would put her in like B or A, but I'd put her
I
maybe the top of
put her in
B.
an A tier because I really like her as a person, but she just can't hit an S because she's not like crazy enough.
Yeah,
you know, like
that's true.
She's lacking that like Danganronpa wacky like crazy character trait, but she's just nice.
She's almost like helpful. A foil to those crazy characters because you need some people who are grounded so you can attach yourself to them like a little life raft as you swirl around in the madness of the rest of what's happening.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. And she's also like an emotional character too. Like when something horrible happens, like she's the one that would react and be like upset about it because like what happened was just really terrible. But you know, it kind of grounds the series and like there's still that mystery of like why are you trapped here? Like what's going on? Especially in the first game, right? So, you know, she's the like, will we ever make it out back to our families? And like, you know, there are stakes kind of character, but yeah, she's just nice. She's nice. I'd hang out with her.
Okay. Next up we have Byakuya or Byakuya. I don't know how to say it, but he is without a doubt S tier as well. What a legendary character. I think he easily slots in right behind Monokuma, right at the top there as one of our prime detectives and skeptics and you know, just sort of, I don't know if he's an antagonist, but he's kind of like a bit of an anti-hero in a way for the earlier game, I guess.
100%. Like he was the kind of character that like you were absolutely screwed if he wasn't around. Like without Byakuya, everybody's dead. Like one of the killers went free without him, like guaranteed. He was so useful, but he's also such a like an asshole.
Yeah.
Great but character. I mean, like he kind of joins up and helps at the end. Like he does get a little bit of like the lone wolf.
I feel like he's just very arrogant. Like he feels like he's above the rest of the cast, so he doesn't really want to sink down and associate with them, and he just sort of wants to take over and solve. But
he was the ultimate progeny, right? So he was just one of those like absolute like 1% spoiled rich kids who's good at everything and has had everything handed to him, and like, you know, he was just sort of the worst, but he was so entertaining at the same time. And him spending time with Toko when she like decides that she's got a massive crush on him is some of the best like character relationships.
She's just totally manipulating her, right? About like getting her to do like his assistant work.
And she knows it, like he's not being subtle about it at all. Like he's constantly telling her like, you disgust me, like I hate you.
But she like wanted it, you know, it was one of those weird anime things too where she wanted to be degraded like that. I don't know. We'll get to her in a minute, I suppose. Next up, we have Celeste, who is a character that I think is one of my favorite visual designs out of all of them. She's sort of like this, like she's almost like a goth sort of. She's very red and black. She's the ultimate gambler, but she has those really cool like spirally pigtails. She could be like a magic card or something, you know?
Yeah, she could be.
I think she's pretty interesting. I can't remember too much about her like plot wise or how she dies or anything like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, she is I think she ends up being one of the killers, if I remember correctly. And her kind of whole motivation at the end is like she just wants to get as much money as possible. Like that turns out to be what she's motivated by. Like, I just want money, like I'm obsessed, and so
it checks out. I would put her like high B or maybe A just because I like her design more than anything. And if we're ranking them holistically, like I think she's cool, but she's obviously not near the top.
I would put her as A as well because she's got some interesting like perspective shifts as well, where like she kind of looks at it like a game in a way, and like, okay, if this is what we have to do to survive, then this is what we have to do. Like this is what logically makes sense. And she's kind of like emotionally devoid in that way, but she ends up being A, kind of helpful, and B, like sort of sinister. Like, you don't trust that she wouldn't murder someone if she felt she had a good opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But you
She's
also
just
don't
playing
think
her
that
odds. Like, she's doing the best thing
exactly.
she can to win at all times, right? That's what her whole thing is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But I remember her having like some of the best dialogue in the game, which I appreciated. She kind of was that sort of like, yeah, playing both sides a little bit, like a little bit of a devil's advocate in a lot of the arguments. And you're right, she has a very cool design. I love her slinky pigtails.
Yes. Okay, so next is Chiaki, who is the girl with a laptop. That is her, right? The girl with the laptop?
No,
No.
you're getting it mixed up. That's the girl with the laptop from the game from 1. This is Chiaki from 2. She's kind of like she's the
Your
ultimate
assistant.
gamer. She's like your assistant right-hand
Yes,
character.
and doesn't she die right away?
She
Or am I mixing
dies
this
later
up?
on. She is obviously spoilers for the Danganronpa games.
Oh, come on. You're not watching this tier list if you haven't played the games. Come on.
Yeah. She's the one that ends up being the like plant with Monami, if you remember. And she was like not one of she's like was like made for the game because you're in that like virtual reality, so she ends up being like the VR plant.
Man, you are so knowledgeable about these games. You have a great memory. I cannot remember these plot points so
My
well.
memory's horrible, but something about Danganronpa, it's all coming back to me. But so I think there's like that mystery that goes on about like, oh, someone's like the traitor, like who is not meant to be here. But then like the double plot twist is like it was Chiaki, but she is genuinely trying to help you. Like it's not that she's like evil traitor.
Gotcha. That's an interesting circumstance, but I wouldn't say that makes her a great character in general. I would say I think she's good right here personally. That would be my vote.
I think she's kind of got the Hina Aoi kind of thing where like she's just sort of like nice and pleasant and likes to play video games, so I might hang out with her. But I also think she kind of falls into the trap a little bit of like kind of too cute anime. Like
I think she was just kind of bland.
Yeah, a little too like I'm the perfect like almost waifu material. Not in terms of her design, she had a good design, but just in terms of like, oh, like I'll play any video game with you, and like, oh, I'm really tired, so I'm gonna fall asleep in like kind of cute and silly places. You know, there's a little
Your
bit
description
too, like,
is just perfect. That's exactly what it is.
So I liked her, but I also felt she was kind of a little bit like pandery. In terms of her personality.
Do you want to put her down to C? We haven't introduced anyone to the C tier yet. I'd be okay for that.
She's B. I think I like her enough that she's B, but she's just neutral.
Just trying to test the waters, just seeing. Okay, this is Chihiro, and she's the girl with a laptop from the first game. Now she's the one.
Chihiro is the
she's a programmer,
boy
right?
with the laptop.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That is the one that has like the gender reveal twist. Where I think it's the trial where it's like, oh, it was in like the certain
the like pool change room. That's right.
Yeah. And then it was like, it doesn't make sense, but it does if, you know, it was actually a boy who did it. So the ultimate programmer. So
the laptop I remember being a very key plot point in the first game. Again, maybe more the laptop than I remember Chihiro at this point. It's been a few years, of course, but I don't know. It's middling B for me.
I would throw up to A. I think Chihiro's interesting because Chihiro had actually like kind of a bit of an arc, which a lot of these characters don't get. They just sort of have like a personality and that's them. But Chihiro had a bit of an arc with sort of like, you know, gaining some confidence and sort of coming to terms with like being okay in their body, which was nice, and like being able to admit as like who they were. And I think she also had an arc with was it Mondo in that game? Yeah, and Mondo like was like, right. Oh, I'll teach you how to work out because like, you know, she was very like insecure about that she was so weak. So Mondo was like helping her helping him secretly to work out, and like there was just some kind of nice stuff with the character.
Yeah, but they were sneaking out at night, right, to go to the gym or something like that.
Yeah. So that was kind of a nice like plot point. But then the main interesting part is definitely when they turn into that computer program that helps them out, but also like has it sort of like, is it still Chihiro? Is it a computer program? Like, you know.
That's true. And the computer program's not listed on this tier list now that I see. So technically that is Chihiro for this list. So we could count them together. We could bump them up, I guess, you know. Where are you thinking?
Yeah, I would even say like the higher of A tier.
Maybe around here.
Yeah, maybe in front of swimming.
Okay. That sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Next we have, this is Fuyuhiko, and he is the ultimate
Yeah.
gangster. One of my favorite ultimates, which I really like because it doesn't mean gangster as in like gangster rap. It's gangster as in like mafioso gangster. And this guy is like
Mm.
threatening people and is acting like a hitman and like all this stuff. I really like this guy. He obviously looks a lot like a swapped palette of that other character from a different one of these other games, right? Like his haircut's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I remember really enjoying this guy, although I think he, to his detriment, dies relatively early on in the second game, if I remember right, or like maybe halfway through.
So he is game 3, and I think he actually might make it to the end, or he like goes out like right at the end. I think if I remember
think he's
correctly.
in the second game, or at least I'm actually looking at this wiki right now. It says second game.
Do I have it wrong? Okay, I'm getting him mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. He's the second game. He's on the island because he's with the the girl who the sword girl.
Yeah, the babysitter one.
And he is the ultimate yakuza, which is even more hilarious.
I think he's pretty cool.
I think he makes it throughout the game, actually.
Doesn't he? Yeah, doesn't he become more sympathetic towards the end of the game? Like he kind of gets like loses that tough persona and ends up being like scared.
Yeah. So his kind of plot points, he starts out, he's like just a hard like yakuza mafia member guy that like, threatens to kill everyone and is sort of a horrible person. But then he has that story where he realizes that Pico, the ultimate swordswoman, is like, cares about having a relationship with him. I think she was like his bodyguard.
Right, that sounds right. Yeah, they came together, right?
Turns out they ended up coming together and actually forming like a real relationship. And then when she dies, he like breaks down and he's crying, and it's actually kind of touching in a weird way. And then he becomes a lot more sympathetic as the game goes on and becomes a lot more helpful. So I loved Fuyuhiko. I found him absolutely hilarious, and then also kind of touching.
Okay. Well, let's bump him up then. I think we're talking about him in a pretty good way.
I would say he's actually an S tier character. Like low end of S tier is where I put him. I loved Fuyuhiko.
See, I feel like I don't have the grounds to dispute you on a lot of these because you remember them so much more distinctly than me. Or maybe I should have opened some kind of wiki thing. Anyways, okay, fine. You know what? I'm not going to dispute you. I'll put him up there. I like him more than this chick, and we put her in the top of A, so I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say he had some funny lines. Like he was really short, I think, and people used to make fun of him for that. So a lot of his lines are like, "Don't treat me like a kid, you bitch."
Because they always have to have one character that's like swearing all the time.
Yeah.
To be
his introduction is name's Fuyuhiko. Just so we're clear, I don't plan to act friendly and shit with you guys. He was just so abrasive for no apparent reason.
Yeah. Oh wow. All right, so we're gonna move along with the tier list. Now this is a verbal warning for us both. We got to speed this up. We're gonna be here for another hour and a half. If we don't, it's gonna be like 2 minutes or less a character. Starting now, we have Gonta. Gonta is one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. He is nothing if not the most endearing. And if there was one character that I would cheer for to make it out of these games alive, it is Gonta for sure. He is just such a kind, simple person. And even when he gets in trouble, it's like an accident that he ended up murdering somebody. Oh, I just feel so bad for Gonta.
Absolutely. Gonta's an S tier. He is the cutest Danganronpa character, hands down.
I think Gonta needs to go here, right after Byakuya.
Absolutely. I'm a Gonta supporter all the way.
Okay. Okay, this is the ultimate ninja guy. I remember him. What's his name?
Right. Do you remember what his ultimate talent was, though? It's something you'd never guess.
Yeah, it's like counting rats or something like that, isn't it? Or like
the ultimate counting
or like
rats.
I don't know. Like,
what kind of
doesn't he have like some weird thing like that? I don't know. Like
ultimate breeder, and he had all those hamsters.
Oh, the breeder. See, I wasn't that far off. Yeah, breeding hamsters.
But what is counting rats? That's not a thing.
I remember there being small rodents, and they were like counting them because they had to be a certain number to go do some thing.
Yeah, he was the ultimate breeder, and he had all the hamsters, and he called them the divas of destruction or something, and he was just an absolute lord.
So similar to Celeste, I really love this guy's style. He's got like that Koga sort of ninja look. I think he's, if anything, like my vote would be sort of here, like end of A, top of B, personally.
I'd kind of be about that too. Like, I think his design's cool. He has a couple funny moments where he just like brings out the hamsters at stupid times. But for the most part, like he was a pretty one note kind of.
He was kind of like there for the gags. Like he was meant to look super cool and then ended up being a total comedy sort of character.
Yeah. Agreed on him.
Right.
I think this next character upcoming is a favorite of both of ours again. I feel like we've talked 100%. About this guy before. Ryoma, the ultimate tennis pro who also had like a history of being in jail.
Yeah, he's like an actual hardened criminal who like redeemed his life, or that's how I imagine his backstory to be anyways. My only complaint with this guy was that we didn't get to know him for that long. Like I know for sure he died earlier than I would have wanted him to, which is the only complaint that I have. And if it wasn't for that, he probably would be arguably my favorite character in Danganronpa, the way he just has his back to the camera all the time. I'd put him kind of maybe to high A or like low S just because of the time restriction, I guess. But he's great.
I'd bump this guy right up to maybe S tier. I love Ryoma. He is just so edgy, but he's not edgy in the way like, you know, the last character was edgy. He's edgy in the way where like he's actually like got the, you know, backstory to back it up. Like he's not the emo edgy. He's like genuinely like such a hardened dude. And yeah, his story's funny. Like him being a tennis pro is a funny like trait.
Well, because he's so tiny. Like he's not even like, you know, these other characters are like somewhat real people, whereas he's like a shy guy.
Yeah, he is. And yeah, he's just a badass. Like I remember at one point he's like, "Oh, I hope somebody kills me, not because I want to die, but because if anyone deserves it, it's me. I've done some fucked up things." And you're like, "What have you done?" And you never really find out, but it's implied that he's like killed a bunch of people. But even with all that, like he never murders anyone. He is genuinely like just gonna ride it out with everyone. So I love Ryoma. He's
shout out to Ryoma.
He's always like smoking or not smoking, but he's got like something he's chewing.
He's a toothpick or something like that, right?
Yeah,
just to look tough.
He's just kind of weird, dude.
All right, so we have another perverted character here. He's a chef, and we're gonna put him right at the end of D and continue on.
Yep, absolutely.
Next up, we have I forget his name, but this is the title character from the second game, right? Kajime?
Yep, it's Hajime. He is the ultimate triple question mark, which does not mean he's the rival in Gen 2 Pokemon. It means that just kind of he didn't know what his talent was for the majority of the game, and then he finds out at the end he's the ultimate hope because Q anime friendship can solve any problem.
How do you categorize the player characters in these games? Because it's like they're not just an avatar for you. They actually have personality, but they're sort of very bland compared to the other characters in the game who are all eccentric.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point. Like they're intentionally bland because there's always that like aspect of like I don't fit in. I guess at least for the first two games. 3's a little bit different, but for the first two, they're like, oh, I'm kind of a fish out of water in this situation.
I say it's almost like a C for me, honestly.
Yeah, I'd throw Hajime in a C. Like he's there, he's chilling.
Like, he's fine. He's just average. If he wasn't the player character, he wouldn't be a B. Like he would definitely be a lower down character.
I think the one redeeming quality of his is kind of interesting. He doesn't know what his talent is for a while, but then it ends up being the ultimate hope, which is just kind of dumb. So it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah. Now this chick was the ultimate mage, right? Like she was the one that was convinced she actually could do like real magic.
Yeah, Himiko. She was convinced she could do actual magic, but was like totally bullshitting because all of her tricks in all of her actual magic performances involved like there was a secret hole that she like went through. So like she's totally just full of shit. I would say Himiko would be my next C. Like I just kind of found her a little bit annoying, and like she wasn't incredibly offensive. She was just kind of boring, and she makes it all the way through to the end and just
I remember being disappointed that she was one of the ones that had made it because there was some others that kept dying off and I was hoping for her. I think I'd put her I'll stick her there behind
the one redeeming quality she has is anytime anyone would ask her something about like how her trick works, she'd be like, it's magic, and like would refuse to explain, but it was so clearly like not real magic and bullshit.
Oh my god, yeah. Okay, this girl, I'm blanking on her name and her talent, but I remember her being one of the most feisty, entertaining characters. And she was like looked like a little kid, but she was not a little kid, right? That was her whole thing.
Yes. So that is Hiyoko, the ultimate traditional dancer. And yeah, she was the character that looked like the small, innocent girl. Like she's tiny, kind of childlike. And she was the one in number 2 where like she was just absolutely savage and just swore at everybody and made 0 friends and insulted everyone at every single opportunity. And like even to the point where like some of it was like genuinely like you'd be surprised by how vulgar some of the things she said were. And then she ends up dying, I think, in the triple murder. So
right. B?
Yeah, I think she's a B. I think she was funny sometimes, but also sometimes just kind of like a bit abrasive.
I'll just stick her at the end of B. That looks about right. I think for her. And this is the girl Abuki. I remember her name, and what is she now? She's the
ultimate musician.
She's a guitarist?
And she's a musician.
Yeah.
But I think she did specifically play the guitar. And she actually, I think, dies with Himiko in that triple murder. So we got some back-to-back.
Wow, maybe they should just go together. What do you think? I feel like she's a little less memorable than Himiko for some reason.
Yeah, I think I liked her design, and occasionally she was entertaining, but I also think she was one of the characters I found a bit annoying from time to time because she was very much of the like, I'm so random kind of humor, which doesn't always land for me. Like,
yeah, no, I agree.
She could just be a little much.
Okay, yeah, well let's just leave her there for now. But we can move her down to C if you want.
I'm kind of a C on her, I think.
Okay.
High C, maybe.
Let's put her high C. I'm pretty sure that's a drink from back in the day. High C, isn't that like a Sunny D competitor? I don't know.
Sounds like it. So it's gotta be orange flavored, not
of course. All right, so next we have Junko, who is like the main antagonist of the first game.
And the whole series.
So that's a pretty cool thing. She's a little bit like crazy and wild and very insane, and I mean, the whole plot twist is just, I remember like shocking, and I remember having to like look it up and really conceptualize what was even going on. But it was cool to have like her, someone you've known throughout the whole game, become this sort of other character.
Well, she dies very early on, if you remember. She gets introduced as the ultimate fashionista, and then she dies, not even in a trial. She dies like there's that rule of like you can't mess with Monokuma, or like you can't like, she breaks a rule and then gets impaled that way. But then there's that whole twist of like, oh, it was actually her sister, and Junko, like the real Junko, has been like piloting Monokuma.
Yeah, she's been in like
secret
in that secret room.
So, yeah, so there was all this like crazy conspiracy about her in the first game, and then it just goes deeper with the following games where they like bring her back, and she's like always the big bad, with all like the additional lore that goes on. So
yeah, it's a cool story. I feel like on her, I'm kind of mid personally. I probably maybe like top of B-ish, maybe mid B personally.
Yeah, I throw her an A, maybe just because she makes for like a really good unhinged villain, but she doesn't really like get much more depth other than like, I just want the whole world to be in despair kind of thing going on. But just for how good the reveals are and how crazy the plot gets, I'd bump her that little bit up to B.
That's fair. That's a good argument. We got a nice little triangle going on here on the graph right now. By the way,
turns out more good characters than bad.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. Okay, we have Katie up next. Katie, however you say it.
Ultimate pianist. Now, this is a tough one to contextualize because I think her as a character kind of meh.
Well, she's right here, like next to this guy as a character.
Exactly, but her as a plot mechanic of she's the character you play as for the first trial, and then it turns out you did it yourself.
Yeah,
is maybe the best Danganronpa like mission of all time.
I think it is my favorite one of all time. It's just such a cool reveal. I don't think there's ever been a mystery game where you're the culprit and you don't even know. Like, that is just fucking awesome.
And not only that, but like when you put all the pieces together and you're kind of reviewing it, it's like, oh my god, it totally makes sense that she was doing all this stuff. Like, she's like, oh, hang on, just let me grab my backpack. We're in the supply room where she grabs the like murder weapon, and you know, she's like, oh, like let me go and put it like, you know, the books back, and that's where she places it, and like it's really, really satisfying the way that it's done.
I think if you look at it through the lens of that being her part of her character, like setting up that murder, that she actually is a very interesting character, and then you add that plot point to it as well, I would actually put her like pretty high, maybe like the top of A, personally.
I think for that reason, she's super elevated. Her just as a character, like if that hadn't been the case and she was just a character in the game, I'd say she's pretty boring.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just such a like iconic Danganronpa moment.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Top of A?
I think top of A seems fair.
Okay. We have this guy with the interesting hair.
We've got Kaito. So this may be where I use my veto because I fucking love Kaito.
Okay.
He is the ultimate astronaut. And he becomes, if you remember, your kind of second in command once you start playing as Suichi in game 2. And he basically joins you and he's like, hey, I'm going to force you to be my friend. And he's like the super optimistic, positive one. And he ends up kind of having a little bit of a relationship with Maki, the assassin girl. And he's just like the most hopeful, like bright light character. But he's, you know, he's not stupid. He's a bit naive, maybe, but I don't know what it was about Kaito. Like, this guy tugged at my heart just a little bit.
I liked him as well. Where would you want to put him?
I would use my veto to throw him up to the end of S tier, even though I know he's probably only an A tier character. I just liked him so much.
Yeah, that's fair. I got a couple that I really like coming up here too, just to speak. But one, Kazuichi, this guy right here with the pink hair, lime green jumpsuit, black toque. This guy's style is off the chain.
Ultimate mechanic. Yeah, he's got the drip. He's got drip. Sure.
Yeah. He has like spiky teeth too. What a cool character. I remember he was just one of those guys that like you looked at the start, you were like, oh, he's gonna be like untrustworthy for sure. But then he just ends up being like a supportive, good dude that just wants to help out. I put him very similar, like the way I remember him, at least like similar to the swimming girl, like just a guy that's kind of around.
I would put him lower, and I will remind you of a detail you may have forgotten. Is that do you remember Sonia Nevermind, the girl that was like a princess from a distant land?
I don't know.
She'll come up, but anyway, he basically spent 90% of the game just like totally simping on this girl.
Oh, did he?
And it was like he was like, oh, I can't ask her out because she's like way too pretty. But then like he just sort of was like, oh, they're going to the beach. Like we got to go look at them. They'll be in their swimsuits. And so Soda starts out as a good character and then he just gets really sad.
I definitely don't remember that, but I'm definitely less inclined to put him high then. Would you like to put him at the top of D?
Honestly, Soda sucked. He starts out good.
Too bad, because his design is cool. His design is so cool.
The second Sonya talks to him, he just falls apart as a character.
Okay, we got to put this guy pretty high then. This is the guy that's actually a robot.
Oh, Kibo, the ultimate robot, yeah.
I remember there being some very funny, humorous parts around him being a robot and like how he's always trying to prove that he's just the same as everyone else sort of thing.
Yeah, and then he gets like weird upgrades. He gets like flashlight eyes or something. Like he gets like kind of full anime. Like treatment.
He gets like, can he fly at one point or something too? Like
at the very end, he gets wings. He has to fight the Mono Beast. He's like flying around the academy or something.
That's right.
Stupid.
That's right. Yeah, I think he's a funny kind of joke character. He's got some good lines, but I wouldn't say he's like an ultimately great.
Yeah, I would have him like higher A tier. I really liked Kibo.
I'd put him maybe here.
Okay.
What do you think?
I can live with that.
Okay.
I'm surprised. I thought Kibo would be like an S tier character for you.
Huh. Yeah, I just think he was maybe not quite as involved as I wanted to see him. And when I compare him to these guys up here, like he's not going to touch Ryoma or like,
That's fair. There's a standard.
There is a standard.
All right. So next we've got Karumi, the ultimate maid, also from the last game.
Yeah, and she ended up being like a really dark character, right? Like, didn't she have like she was actually a murderer or something?
Yeah, she ended up doing a murder because she had some like she worked for the prime minister or something outrageous. So she was like, "Oh, I have to get back to him because he needs me," and so that was her motivation to murder. And it just ended up being like she was a weird character.
Yeah, I don't remember much of her, to be honest with you. I'd put her lower down.
Yeah, that's fair. She is one of I remember her design very specifically, but probably one of the lesser memorable characters.
Yeah,
I think she also might be the one that kills Ryoma, which is a big negative.
Oh well, I mean, yeah, screw you then, lady.
Yeah. True. All right, we're back to first game now with Kiyotaka, and this is the guy that has So he is the ultimate moral compass, and he is all about we're gonna follow the goddamn
He is
rules,
the ultimate
guys.
hall monitor. I loved this guy. His passion was so admirable. He was just so, dedicated to his craft in a way that other characters may not have been, or maybe it was just so apparent because they were in a school and there's like the inherent rules of a school, all that type of setting. But I loved this guy. I would put him in like a high A personally for him.
I think he has to at least be there. Like, I'd almost S tier this guy. Like,
you want to put him on the back of S? I really like him.
He was so genuine, and he was so funny. Like, I remember there's that one scene where him and Mondo are in the like they always had conflict because Mondo was like the troublemaker one, right? And they had that one scene where they're like in the sweat room.
Yeah, and they were like, who could endure the longer in the steam room?
Yeah, who could endure the longest? They're like shirtless, just yelling at each other.
That's one of the greatest scenes in Danganronpa as well.
Yeah, I think he dies pretty early on, but he's great. So.
He does. Good character though.
It's a good time.
We have the ultimate imposter next, otherwise known as Chunky Byakuya. And I would say that for the comedic value and the way that they do the whole switcheroo, and it's not actually him, but it looks like him, but it's like, the deception, he behaves very similarly. I would say he goes like right beside the real one.
Absolutely.
Almost like they have to be together.
The fact that they put him in the game and he dies in the first murder, he's the first victim that goes down, and he's just about to tell you, and you have this whole setup like, oh my god, what happened to Byakuya? Like, he's back. Like, he says he's going to tell you something, what's going on, and they kill him, and you have zero closure until the end of the game where you find out it's fake. And the fact that the game just trolls you the entire time with this character is so incredibly funny. Like, my jaw dropped seeing him for the first time, and I laughed so hard when the reveal finally happened. So he's an S tier, 10 out of 10. And as a fun fact, I've got the wiki open. Not that I need tons of reminders, but just to make sure I've got everyone's names correct and a little refresh. On the actual wiki for Danganronpa 3, his name is Byakuya Togami, and it says ultimate affluent progeny, which is Byakuya's real thing. But obviously, he is like, he's the ultimate imposter. But the wiki has him down like as if he's just Byakuya.
Fantastic.
Which I guess maybe for spoilers, but I like to think it's just he's doing such a good job. He's fooled the wiki.
All right. Okay, 25 more to go. We got this. Next up, this guy with the checkered scarf. He shops at West 49 back from 2005.
Yeah, Hot Topic West 49. This is Kokichi Oma. He is the ultimate supreme leader, and that is somehow not a joke. That's just legitimately who he is.
What a fascinating character he was. The way that he claimed to have like an evil organization, and that they would like, people couldn't trust him because he was sort of a rogue character, like he was. I feel like wasn't he by himself for quite a large portion of the start of the game that he was in?
He just sort of like did shit. Like, he didn't murder until like the very end, but he just always pretended he was the murderer and just was a total shit disturber. And he manipulated Gonta a lot.
Yeah, it's like when you're playing one of those social deduction games and someone doesn't know that they're supposed to be a good person, so they just like mess around. It's like this guy, like he had no actual care if he was helping or hindering.
Yeah, he was the chaos character, which I really like Kokichi. I think the chaos character is always really interesting. The only downside I have to him is I think number 2 did a chaos character a little bit better.
Okay, where do you want to put him?
I'd say he's an A tier, I think.
Okay. I'd be down to put him maybe after Celeste. I like him more than Junko.
And they look like they would hang out.
They do. Yeah, for sure they do. Okay, this guy, remember he was the ultimate like museum curator or something?
Yes. So let me find this guy. He's game 2.
Korakio,
yes. He has maybe one of
number
the
3.
Weirdest.
Game.
You're right, number 3. He has maybe one of the weirdest character stories. He's the ultimate anthropologist.
Right, anthropologist. I don't know, like he was so quiet. He kind of I remember he killed someone, right? Like his design kind of changed and he got really
Yeah.
cool just for a second.
So he gets all the thorns around him and the roses. So okay, take you back. You'll remember this the second you hear it. He killed, I believe, on the cool seance murder, which was a really good trial. But the reason he killed was because he wanted to get back to his sister, and I think they had like a weird incest relationship, and they were twins, and it was just really fucking weird.
I mean,
and he like thought they shared a body or something, and he was like all of a sudden like being her instead of him.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah. What a weird guy. Maybe top of D.
Yeah, he's
That's
just
fine.
super weird.
Top of D is
His
good.
redeeming quality was he was interesting because he was so weird, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing.
I wouldn't say so. We have another high tier character coming here though. What's her name? Kyoko, yeah, Kyoko.
So I say Kyoko is probably the best like of the
best partner, like advisor kind of characters.
I agree. She is the ultimate detective as well, which like, wow, that's super helpful to have around.
Yeah, well, it was interesting in the first game to have her and Byakuya kind of together solving the mystery, and she was very much helping you, but sometimes would work by herself, and then they would have different theories and kind of play off each other's ideas, and they were really the two drivers of like solving the story for you in the first game. I liked her a lot. I think I would put her in S tier, but maybe not. Maybe like here.
Yeah.
Myself,
I would
like,
say she's maybe above. I would put her above, like after Ryoma, beside Space Boy Kaito, because I think she's the best one of those like helper characters. And she had a cool mystery too, like you didn't know what her ultimate was for the longest time, and like why she wore those gloves, and she kind of had a bit of a mystery where like she was really helpful, but you didn't know if you could trust her 100% because there were those like gaps in how much she told you.
Yeah, it's like she was keeping you in the dark, but it was intentional, but she couldn't tell you it was intentional. Yada yada. Yeah.
So next up, we've got Leon, our very first murdered character, all the way back in the first game, the ultimate baseball star.
He's got to be immortalized for that in some way. The first death, like that's goes down in history.
So yeah, he was a baseball star. He was kind of a little bit intense about it. Just loved. Actually, I think he might have been the first murderer, is what it was, and then he died. And yeah, there's the meme around him of like, when the character dies, they write like Leon on the wall, but it's like upside down, so it looks like L. It looks like numbers, and you're like, what are those? Like, what's 7? Like 3, and it's like very clearly just says Leon though. It's like, oh, I wonder who did it.
Yeah. I don't know. We don't really get to know him that well.
Yeah.
Nor do we.
I put him in B. I think
you think B? He's just generic.
Just neutral.
Just kind of.
I think he
maybe here.
Pokemon. So that's something.
He does look like a Pokemon trainer. He kind of looks like a Pokemon as well. Like he could be a dragon almost, like a little beard coming.
He kind of does. Anyway, that's Leon.
All right.
So the next one is Mahiru, the ultimate photographer from Game 2.
Yeah. Now this girl is one of the ones I will say I remember the very least.
Yep, she certainly was a character in the game, and she took some photos, which was helpful sometimes. And I think she was. I
think she died.
She died
pretty soon on.
Yeah, I'd probably throw her in C. I think she was just kind of.
I think C as well. I think we'll put her just the back there. Who cares? Okay, I remember her.
All right, this is Maki. So she tricks you throughout the game as the ultimate child caregiver, and then it turns out she's actually the ultimate assassin, and she's basically Black Widow.
That is a sick character shift, I will say. You always knew that there was something going on with her. Like there was always something a little bit too suspicious for her to have just been a babysitter.
She would never let you in her room. That's what it was. Because 3 was cool, right? It had all the characters had their own room based on their talent. And when you got the keys, she refused to let anyone go and look in her room, which obviously turns out because it was like full of guns and weapons. And
set up like an assassination room.
But she told you she was the ultimate,
babysitter.
Babysitter. So
yeah, I think she's pretty high ranked personally.
I I think she's an S tier. I think she goes right up there with Kaito. They're the best couple in the whole game.
I would put her ahead of Kaito personally.
Yeah.
Maybe just right here.
She starts out as one of those, like, I'm really tough and I can't get close to anyone, but she sort of opens up. Like, they end up calling her Mackie Roll as the nickname, which is adorable. Yeah, she's a great character.
Now we have the next character is our main character from the first game.
Makoto
Nagi, I believe is his name. And he's going to go, I think, right beside this guy.
I think that is true. The ultimate lucky student, but not so lucky to make it above C tier.
Nope.
Although I think he's above Hajime. I think I like him.
I put him above. Let's put him at the top of C. I think he's ahead of Ibuki as well.
I think so. He's likable, but he's just very main character.
He's syndrome. Yeah, exactly. All right.
So this is the nurse now from game 2, I believe. What the heck is her name? Mikan, the ultimate nurse. And I want to throw her all the way down in D and hang out with the pervert boys.
She's the one that would always fall down and like have her like skirt up and stuff like that. Yeah,
100%. That's 80% of what she did. I think
she would be like
twist in the end where she was like kind of psycho, but like
it's not gonna redeem you for that. Yeah, come on. Come on. This chef is still worse though because he's the ultimate perverted character.
Yeah, he is the worst. And I think she was in one of the worst trials, like that one where they have like everyone just got sick with some like weird disease where they have to lie or like do weird stuff. And it was the worst trial, and that's like kind of where she's most prominent. So
yeah, screw it.
Straight down the bottom.
Yeah. Now this girl, I forget her name, but she was the ultimate inventor, right? Like she would make all the different things that they needed for some of the trials.
Yes, so that's Miu from game 3.
And she was also one of those characters that swore all the time, from what I remember.
I would say not only was she one of the characters that swore all the time, she was the character that probably swore the most out of any of the games. Like, I couldn't even read 80% of her quotes on this podcast because it is just way too vulgar and, like, just some of the words that she'd say. Yeah. And she would, like, insult people by, like, having really, really like specific and kind of grotesque like sexual stuff she'd say to people.
Yeah. And I remember her now too. I think she's going to be low down. Which is too bad because the Ultimate Inventor is a pretty cool title. Cool skill, but it doesn't save her from this.
Yeah, I'd say she's probably the highest of those characters just because it was so outrageous, the things that she'd say. Like, it would be funny just based on, like, you would never expect it to go that far. Like, she's funny for the same reason that, like, if somebody started swearing in the new Mario movie would be funny because, like, it's just shocking. And, like, even though you know that's who she is, throughout the whole game, the whole time she's there, it continues to shock you because you just don't expect anyone to have written a line that grotesque.
I'll put her at the top just because I think the vulgarity, if that's a word, isn't as bad as the pervertedness, which is the other characters at the bottom of D. So we'll go with that. Speaking of ranking lists, we could do a whole separate ranking list on best haircuts in video games, but our man Mondo here would be near the top of that list for sure. His hair looks like a little, I don't even know what it looks like, a cream corn kind of like looks ridiculous. A Hershey Kiss. I love Mondo. Mondo is the ultimate biker.
His hair.
What a character though. Ultimate biker. I think he's an S tier for sure.
He is an S tier character, and he looks a lot like a guy from Hunter x Hunter. Which
with the big hair. I remember that guy too.
And he's also like the similar kind of like, oh, I'm so tough and badass, but secretly like really emotional. Yeah.
I would put him like after Gonta, before Monomi, personally.
Absolutely. I would throw Mondo, the ultimate biker gang leader. Like, that's just so outrageous. And then he's like, oh, his brother had a sob story and he's like going on for him.
And he has the Seto Kaiba jacket collar that sticks up really high.
Yes,
looks really sweet.
Yeah, he's got the PlayStation 5 outfit. He looks really great. Sweet. And he was vulgar, but like in a funny way, not so much in a really like outrageous way. But he's like his introductory line is "Name's Mondo Iwata. Nice to fucking meet ya." Like, I remember the voice actor just did such a good job with him.
Oh man. All right. This character, I feel like, is this one of the real characters, or is this someone from
You know what?
the
I don't
side
recognize that
games?
character.
I
I
think
think
this is
that's
the side
fake.
game character.
Throw
Yeah.
her right out of the list.
All right. So let's go to Nagito then. Nagito, another chaos character, which I feel like you're gonna want to rank pretty highly.
He's my S tier. I think he is the reason that Kokichi is A, is because Nagito does the chaos character, I think, just that much better. He is so compelling. His last trial is the one where he like kills himself because he wants it to be like an impossible to solve murder. So he like goes as far as to kill himself for it because he just wants everyone to end up like in despair. Like he, I think, is just like really obsessed with Junko, and so he's trying to like recreate the despair goal she's after or something like that. And he is just like, he's just so convoluted and such an absolute shit disturber. I fucking love that guy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him too. And what I like about him is he's like pleasantly happy the whole time, even though he's like deliberately screwing with everyone in the environment. Like he doesn't really seem to care if they win or lose. But he's in a good place. Like he's just, and there's that opening scene too where you're on that boat and you see him, and I think you're like greeted by him before you actually get into the game. And I just found that whole sequence, like, it just gives you a little clue into him and like making sure you know he's important at the very start. And then I remember seeing him on that beach kind of at the start as well, and it's compelling the whole game through.
He almost seems like he's gonna be your right hand man, and then it drops later on where like, oh my god.
I think you even do think he's the right hand man for the very start, and then it kind of changes. But I would put him pretty high personally also.
Absolutely. I think he is one of the best characters in terms of characterization, and also just in what he does for the game that he's in. Like, he is the reason, like, I think 2 would objectively be my least favorite game if it wasn't for Nagito, but he raises it so tremendously. Like, I would put him above Gonta. Like, I'd put him right after
that's what I was going to say. Gonta, between those two.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember this guy, and I remember him being quite enjoyable for the times he was around.
So that is Nekomaru. He's the ultimate team manager, which maybe is the funniest ultimate that you could possibly have.
And then he becomes Mechamaru.
He becomes a Mechamaru.
Afterwards, he dies and becomes a mech. Like, that's fucking awesome.
Mechamaru. Oh, I was gonna say like B, but with Mechamaru,
I think he's an A character for sure. I think he's an A. I don't think he's quite on the tier as these stellar characters at the top, but the fact that he gets reincarnated as a mech is hilarious.
Yeah, he's so funny, and he's just like, he seems like he's gonna be such a jerk, and then he's just like, getting everyone to like try their best because he's like a motivational speaker almost. Right. Team manager.
I just imagine him being like the manager, like the assistant manager of like a Walmart, but he's like the best person to ever do that job. And he's like so
But he also is like
satisfied.
Kind of a ripped badass. And he always is like he's yelling all the time for kind of no reason.
I think I like him a little bit less than Kibo, but I think they should go together because they both become robotic. Or they both are robotic.
I think that's totally reasonable.
Okay. Cool.
All right, we're getting down to it. We're the last line.
We're getting there.
So that is Pico. We kind of talked about her earlier as like she's the foil for Fuyuhiko, and I would say probably B tier. Like, I think she's not overly interesting by herself. She comes as a package deal to Fuyuhiko, but is like the one that is the plot device as opposed to the character.
Yeah, I would put her kind of second in B. I think, just if anything, because Gundam is got that humor value with the ultimate hamster breeder, and his design I think is just a bit cooler with his scarf and whatnot.
That's true. The main thing Pika is going for her is she is cool, and she's the ultimate swordsman, which is pretty badass.
It is. This guy, I remember thinking he was going to be like a chaotic character as well. Yeah.
That is Rantaro Amami, and I always called him Hamtaro, so that's how I remember him. Now, he is a cool character because he starts out, he's the first one that dies, and he is the ultimate. We don't know what his ultimate is, so it's another really good mystery there. And then he ends up dying, so we never get to figure out what it is, but it gets revealed at the end of the game that he's the ultimate survivor, and he's like one of those like, in the survivors were like, we're bringing the winners back and do like the winner game. So he won a previous Danganronpa game and then got to come back, which seems horrible to have to do it a second time. So that was kind of his twist, which is very interesting. But we also see like, you know, an hour of him being mysterious, and then
and
he
I
dies.
think that's what I thought. Like, I didn't really like, I remembered him to look at him because I know like there's something shady about this guy. But when I think about my memory of the game, I don't really remember any specific scene or like personality quirks of his. So I think as cool as his setup is, I don't think he could really be above like a C character, maybe a B.
I put him in B because I don't think there's anything negative about him. Like, I think he had a lot of potential, and I think I'm biased towards liking him because when I played 2 and 3 with a friend of mine who'd already played them. So I think that changed my experience a bit. And so we were joking around because there's always like you can have like almost romance a character sometimes, or like you get like you can prioritize who you spend time with. And so I had made the joke at the beginning that I was gonna date Rantaro because you're Kaede at the time, right? So like, I'm gonna date Rantaro, and I like, you know, kind of like made this narrative about how funny that was gonna be. And then my friend, of course, is laughing because he knows that not only is Rantaro gonna die, but so is Kaede in the first mission. So he's high on my list for like that reason, but that's biased. As a character, maybe he's just,
I think he's pretty middling, honestly. Like, I couldn't put him above these guys when it's like he's barely even in the game.
Yeah. That is totally reasonable.
Now, Sakura, though. Sakura will not be below S. I don't care what anyone says.
I agree.
She is completely legendary. She is not only one of the coolest designs, like she powers up like a Super Saiyan. She is unbelievably muscular and just a strikingly designed character. But she's also so charismatic, and she will do anything to save the group, you know, like she's willing to put herself in dangerous situations, and she has that relationship with Aoi, I think her Aoi, right? Where they're like really close friends, and they like would take a bullet for each other kind of thing. They've got each other's back through this stressful situation. I just loved Sakura.
Agreed. I think Sakura is, for as much as like a lot of the characters are really kind of like tropey or just picking on a personality trait or two, Sakura's a good character for like really of subverting that a lot of the time. Like, she starts out, like, a couple of characters call her the ogre, and it's very much like, seems like it's gonna be that joke of like, oh, she's like the tough, brutish, like, you know, masculine girl, but that's really not at all what Sakura story ends up being.
It's a nice subversion of what you think.
Yeah, I think she's an absolute badass. She's really smart and helpful. Like, I think she's great.
And she wears one of those Sailor Moon outfits at the same time as still being like one of these.
Yeah, she does.
I mean, I would probably put her around Mondo. Maybe just ahead of Mondo beside Gonta.
I can agree with that.
What do you think?
Her and Gonta might be the two biggest characters, so they'd have to stand beside each other in the photo at the back.
Except the ultimate impersonator would have to be switched with Nagito. So yes. Oh man. All right, we got Sailor. Well, it looks like a Sailor Moon character.
Sailor Sayaka. So she is the ultimate pop sensation, and she is the first murder in the game. The first game that Leon kills her, and she's basically just like, you know, girl next door. You went to high school with her as the main character, and you think you're gonna get along, and then she dies.
Yeah.
And you're sad about it. That's basically what she's got going for her.
How do you feel about middle of C?
Yeah, I think that's fair. She's fine.
Yeah, okay. Baseball cap guy.
It's baseball cap guy. That's Suichi, the playable character of number 3. The ultimate detective. So I like Suichi. I would say of the 3 playable characters, Suichi is my favorite.
I feel like he is the best one.
He's got an actual talent, and I think he is kind of got the most personality out of the 3 of them.
I would go like this. Just put them all next to each other with him at the top.
Yeah, I think I'd be willing to give him up to B tier, but just for the nice cleanliness of having them together in like their own little rank.
Yeah, it's nice, right? It's a good division of like the B is the most average, you know, like we don't really dislike him, we don't really have anything great about him, and then C just has like he's the top of it, but he's just a little bit below that 50% threshold. I feel like it's such a nice poetic way to do it. Okay.
So this is Sonia Nevermind, the princess that we talked about in relation to Kokichi. Yeah, she's a princess. She's kind of interesting in the way of like she's one of those characters that doesn't always know everything because like, oh, I don't get that reference to whatever is popular or something. And she's also like really obsessed with those serial killer, I don't think they're books, or it's like the real serial killer that someone like impersonates in number 2. Like she's super into I can't remember what it's called. It's like a bunny or something.
Interesting. No, I don't recall that off the top of my head, but I remember she has some kind of like out of context jokes like Drax would, right? Like how she doesn't understand the context of certain things because she's from a different environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she has like kind of some weird quote she says because it's like, you know, like it's raining cats and dogs. If you were to say that here, it sounds normal because you're used to it. But if you had never heard that phrase before, it's a really like bizarre thing to say. So she was kind of interesting just in because she was such a unique character in that way. But she also didn't really stand out too much like personality wise, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, pretty average. I think we're talking like a B here. Maybe the end of B. Yeah. Worst of B.
Yeah, I'd throw her in the B tier.
Okay. Okay, we got only a few more to go here.
Oh, so this is Tenko. So I'm going to tell you right now, Tenko is one of my least favorite characters in the whole series. She is the Aikido master, but what she really is so you know how we said Soda was just a simp for Sonya the whole time? Yeah, this is Tenko, but with a mage girl. Like, she just drools over the mage girl all game, and then 80% of her dialogue is taking any opportunity she has to say that men are terrible.
Okay, I do remember her now.
She just does, and she's like, oh, you're disgusting. She's like, well, you can't trust that guy because he's a man. And like, she just hates every single male character in the game immediately for no reason. And like, degenerate males is her catchphrase.
Right.
And, like, you know,
it's like she's trying to balance out the really pervy male characters, but in an almost equally as unenjoyable way that's like doesn't do anything to remedy the bad stuff they're putting forward.
I would say it's like basically the same, and like she's like, you know, very manipulative to Himiko and like, you know, tries to get her to do whatever she wants. And I don't
have much good to say about her really. And she's not like, I don't know. Yeah, her design's not overly cool. I put her the like high D.
Yeah, I think she's on high D. She was my least favorite character in 3. I think.
I'd say to put her here, personally. Okay, we have Genocide Jack, Genocide Jill next. This is a double feature, considering they're right next to each other. They're gonna go next to each other in S tier.
Toko and Genocide Jill, absolutely throw them up.
We're going to put him here at the end. Now, this is an interesting discussion. What a cool character. So this character changes personalities based on when they sneeze. And when they sneeze, a different personality comes out. One of them is like a shy, timid schoolgirl. And the other one is like Edward Scissorhands' murderer with a crazy Gene Simmons tongue.
Yes, that's right. She always does the tongue thing. Yeah, and it would happen, obviously, the most like inopportune times. They're in the middle of like she's in the middle of giving crucial information, and then she sneezes and is the serial killer, and she's like, I'm not helping you losers.
I think she's got to go. Oh man, is she better than Mondo? I think she might be.
Ooh.
I don't think I could put her above Sakura.
See, the problem is, you know, I'm definitely not above Sakura. The problem is, without Genocide Jill twist, she's a pretty lame character.
That's true, but Genocide Jill is 50% of her personality.
Exactly. When you throw them as a package deal, I would maybe put them like just below Ryoma.
Oh, you put them lower, hey? I would put them. Yeah. I would put them above. Like I think.
Okay, throw Ryoma in front of Fuyuhiko.
I think if Ryoma goes there, and then we put these two like this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Put Genocide Jill first.
Jill first, so yeah, Jill first. Jill first.
There we go.
Okay.
Easy. So next is Samugi, and she was a big player in Game 3, the ultimate cosplayer who seemed so unassuming for the majority of the game, and then turns out to be the big bad of it all because she is like cosplays as Junko and is like the new ultimate despair by the end. So I thought it was a pretty effective twist. Like I really didn't see her coming as a suspicious type.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about her. What I like is that she is portrayed as one of those sort of generic characters that doesn't have a lot of personality, like a few of the ones we've talked about. And then it turns out that she, at the end, she kind of comes out and becomes this major person that you don't suspect. Almost like she's being kept around as like death fodder for half the game, and then she turns into something else.
Yeah, and like historically in the games, there's always like one of those characters that kind of makes it to the end every time, and so like you just sort of assume eventually like that's going to be her.
Yeah,
but then
I agree. I would put her. I think she's still really like a high B for me. I don't think she's like overly amazing, but I'd put her maybe even the top of B, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's fair because I think a lot of what makes her interesting is at the end when she like cosplays as Junko, but that's maybe more of a testament to Junko's character being interesting as opposed to her, like Tsugumi specifically.
Yeah, getting to see more of Junko. I think I agree with you. I think that's a good place for her. Which means, speaking of characters that kind of just float to the end of the game and don't do a whole lot, here we have the ultimate clairvoyant. This guy somehow dawdles his way all the way to the end of the second game, basically contributing nothing and being totally useless the whole time.
That is correct. I think if we had to award a character for being the most useless character in all of Danganronpa, it would be Yasuhiro.
He does like nothing. I just get the impression they're all sitting around kind of at the school, solving these mysteries, going around, finding clues. I just feel like this guy just sat in his room the whole time and did like nothing, you know?
He was the ultimate clairvoyant too. Like you think that might come in handy.
I think all he does was electrocute his hair on his crystal ball and make it all go crazy, but he didn't actually do a whole lot of anything. And he was really aloof too. Like he just didn't ever really seem to be checked in with anything that was going on.
One of those people that just gets through life like being 10% aware of what's going on around him at all times. Like there was no urgency with anything he did. Like he never really was fully paying attention. Like he was like the token stoner guy, but like no access to actual drugs. It was just that his base personality.
I think he's pretty mid. I think end of B. I'd probably put him maybe just ahead of the princess girl here.
I put him in B. Like he had some good moments just because everybody thought he was useless, so that was funny.
Sure, and like you genuinely I didn't wish anything bad upon him. Like I was wishing good things. You know, I didn't want him to fall victim.
Dumb, but inoffensive. He wasn't a bad person. He was just an idiot, which isn't a crime. So
no, it's not a crime. Speaking of crimes, though, these last characters we have might have committed a few. It is all ranked as one, the Mono Cubs. There are 5 Mono Cubs from the third game. And I feel like it's the right thing to do to rank them together because they all kind of go as an ensemble.
They're basically like the Power Rangers of this game, right? Like
they're like the 5 aspects of Monokuma in a lot of ways, I think. Or like that's kind of how I took them to function. But I really liked the Mono Cubs. I don't know. I have a special spot for Mono Me, though. I don't think they're any better than her. I think they're maybe, I don't know, B-ish.
Where B?
I'd put them maybe in B, yeah. I feel like you're a bit lower on them than I am, though.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I was gonna like settle for them to be an A tier. I think some of them I like more than others. And I think they had some really funny moments, like especially when they started to have conflict with each other. And Monodam is by far my favorite one. Like he just got bullied by the others. Yeah, he doesn't talk, and he does the announcements at one point. The like, "Good morning" in the nighttime. He does the announcements, and he just doesn't say anything. Like he gets on the monitor and then like just stands there. So I think they had some really high highs, the Mono Cubs, but I also think there were times in the game where they showed up and I didn't particularly find them funny, and they just sort of missed the mark from time to time.
Yeah, and sometimes I think they could go on for a little while too, because when Monokuma shows up to give an announcement, it's just him and he says what he needs to say and he gets out of there, whereas these guys can banter back and forth. And I feel like there was a couple times when I'm like, look, there's something really intense going on here, and I really just want to go talk to like my other teammates and like see what's up with them. I don't really want to like go on this aside about something that the Cubs are trying to tell you. So yeah, I think they're still like better than they are annoying though.
Yeah, I would put them maybe like either in the highest of B or the lowest of A, because I think they're better than they are bad, but they definitely can be a bit polarizing.
Okay, how do you feel about third spot in B tier?
Okay. But
after Gundam,
Monodam first.
Monodam first for sure. Monodam first, and the rest don't matter.
Agreed.
I think.
Maybe Monokid second because he's got a great design.
Which is Monokid, the red one, the blue one? Oh yeah, he kind of looks like Kiss.
He does look like a Kiss character.
Okay, there we go. I think this yellow one's last. I don't like him at all. He's kind of off-putting.
Yeah, the stupid tiger, whatever.
Yeah. All right, so I think our tier list is complete. Of course, number 1, Monokuma. What can you say? We all expected that for sure. I think we got all the characters in here. I'm just trying to make sure, but yeah. How do you feel about the tier list?
I feel pretty good about it. I'm surprised that we agreed so much on so many characters and there wasn't anyone super divisive. But overall, I think it's good, and I'm glad that we have so many S tiers. I know a lot of tier lists, so like they don't have S because it's like, oh, it makes it less special. But the strength of Danganronpa is largely its characters, so it makes sense that there's so many up at the top of the table.
I agree, and I think that's one of those things too. And it's like, I know what they mean. Like, I don't think it's fun when you toss too many things into S. Just like I don't think it's fun when you like toss too many things into D and just shit all over the characters for being stupid. But I think we got a nice balance of placing them all kind of in the right groupings and it's pretty well distributed, honestly. Like we have a lot in all of these tiers.
For the Man, there's a lot of Danganronpa characters. Please give us Danganronpa 4 so that we can add to this.
God, that would be nice.
I will play almost an infinite amount of them, I think.
I would love to play another Danganronpa, but for now we have to wait until another one comes out. So hopefully that's not too far away. So until we wait for that. We got a lot of things to do, and one of those things is listener mail. The way we like to close out every single episode of this show. So if you would like to get in touch with us to write in for a future question, you can do so at CloudControlPod at proton.me, or you can tweet us as well at CloudControlPod. Get in touch with us. Ask us a question just like Jonah did for today. And so we'll close out today's episode with a question from Jonah.
This one is, how do you feel about game mechanics game categories, not mechanics. How do you feel about game categories like RPG or open world? Are they useful, and do they factor into your decision making when picking a game?
That's a big question.
This is a big one, and I think maybe we'll tackle it small here just in the service of time, but maybe as a larger discussion for later. I would say they're pretty low. I think sometimes it might get my interest with certain titles. Like, obviously, if someone says like, I go, ooh, is it actually? Or like Metroidvania is kind of neat, or like puzzle. Like some of those ones that are a little bit more distinct or niche can sometimes be like a door opener for looking into a game. But whether or not they actually factor into my decision making, I say is pretty low, because oftentimes they're not very descriptive. Like they're either way too vague, like every single game is an RPG now, essentially. They're just kind of like, if it's really niche, it sort of misses the mark. Like I don't think every game that has a dodge roll is a Souls-like, because that's such a tiny portion of the game. So I think they're overall like can be a little bit useful, but very low in terms of if I actually like pick something based off of it.
That's an interesting way to describe it, because my answer is very similar, but I think I'm just switching a little bit of it around. I think that what am I trying to say? There's a duality going on here. I think that they do influence my idea if I'm going to buy a game or not, because those sort of descriptions are what gets you interested in a game. If you hear something is a Souls-like, you're instantly going to be like, oh, I'm going to check that out to see if it's actually true. If I hear something's like, oh, that's kind of like, oh, it's like a Persona style game, or like, oh, that's kind of like, I don't know, kind of like Phoenix Wright, like it's a fun visual novel where you're solving mysteries, I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Like that's an interesting genre. But I think the problem for me is that those words that we're using to talk about these, like you said, RPG, like everything's an RPG these days. Similar to how I always say on this podcast that like what we think of as an indie game, we need to change our definitions, because there's indie publishers that have tons of funding. There's indies that are like two guys in a basement. I think there's like what we used to think of as like, oh, I'm a big RPG game fan because you played Super Nintendo games like Chrono Trigger. That's not the same thing these days as like God of War is an RPG, and so is like Octopath Traveler. Like those are very different games just because they have skill trees and stats and stuff. So I think the framework of thinking about games in genres like that is helpful, but I think we need to have a whole discussion about like what those new categories could be, because everything these days, like you said, is just so cross disciplinary in the way that they are designed. Like every game has a dodge roll, every game has a skill tree, every game has experience. You know, they're also taking from each other's ideas.
I think you summed up what I meant in a more succinct way, but like I think it's like a good like first bit of information. Like, okay, is it a puzzle game? Like, I know it's not going to probably be a first person shooter versus a puzzle game. Like, that is a big distinction. But once you get past that like really broad level of what kind of game is it going to be, it's basically useless because there's just so much variety within every genre. And so many games now are like crossed over with so many different types of categories, which are not overly like clearly defined in a lot of terms either. Like RPG is like, does that just mean it has like level ups? Does that mean you have like a skill tree? Does that mean you like, you know, play a certain character and go on a story? Like there's a lot of kind of like vague aspects to the definition of what it means. So
yeah,
I think and I think you brought up too, you're like, oh, this game is like Phoenix Wright, but I would say that's not necessarily a category. That's comparing it directly to another game, which I think is significantly more helpful because that narrows it down, right? Like if you say games like Phoenix Wright, I'm like, okay, these are the 10 things I know about Phoenix Wright, which is very different than just saying it's a visual novel, which Phoenix Wright, that's technically where it would fall. So
yeah, and it also gets interesting too when you think about like, well, is roguelite a genre? Because if it is, just because you like roguelites doesn't mean you're going to enjoy Slay the Spire and Into the Breach and Hades and Dead Cells and all these games. Like those are all roguelites, but they can all take the form of like traditional game genres, which means like no one's gonna like all of those games just because they're all a roguelite. So it's just there's too much crossover these days. This medium is expanding too much. It'd be like in movies, like, oh, I really like animated movies. Okay, well, do you like all types of animation then, or do you like, you know, like there's more sub genres than that now. I think is maybe what we're trying to say.
Exactly. I think the other thing too about it is like I don't know if you can necessarily fix it. Like it's almost an impossible task because the vocabulary we have to describe it can't like it's not evolving at the same pace that games are. And the other thing is like it's not, if it's too broad it's not helpful, but they also can't be too restrictive because you can't have like 500 different types of categories of games. That's not helpful if there's like 6 things within each category, right? Like it has to be encompassing, but because there's no like hard set rules about what a game has to be, like it's never going to fit perfectly into the little box of like that's specifically an RPG. So like, I don't know if there's a way to like actually categorize them in like in a nice polished way that we'd like there to be.
Yeah, I know, and it's even getting more like even within RPG, like within for a long time it's always been like a Western RPGs like Skyrim and whatnot versus JRPGs like Pokemon and Final Fantasy and all of those, and even those are getting blurred now. Like Forspoken is very Western RPG influenced in a lot of ways, and that's from Square Enix, and I'm sure it works the other way as well. Like you can see examples of everything just kind of becoming more amalgamated together. Fascinating question though. You know, it's a lot of like, I feel like this is a topic where it's like, this could just be a topic of the show and we could just go back and forth with examples and dig deeper into this and really, we should look into doing this more often. I think this is very fascinating to me. Classifications and like organization and stuff like that. Maybe just because I do some of that stuff for work, but it's really making my brain think about this even more. So thank you for the question, Jonah. That was great. Kate, what an episode. We've had a long one today.
I mean,
I didn't know if you were going to say something.
It is time to go to bed.
It was time to go to bed. All right. Well, with that, everyone, that's going to close us out for today's show. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back, as always, with our episode next Tuesday. Although between this episode and that one, look out for another Last of Us review, because as those of you who pay attention to our channel might know, we're doing a whole separate series right now, reviewing every episode of HBO's The Last of Us. Within a day or two after the episodes come out, we try and do that. So look out for that episode in between. We have a whole playlist set up on our channel as well for anyone that wants to go see our reviews of the show so far. Spoiler alert, it's really, really good, and you should definitely watch HBO's The Last of Us if you have any type of interest. So that's our recommendation for you. Anyways, this has been Cloud Control, so thank you very much for joining us. And remember, we are the gaming podcast. It's not just good, we're good enough. And we'll see you on the next episode.